Hey, hello YouTube, Trademark Kill here. Today we have a continuation of the Road to RWBY Volume 4. This is episode 4, and today we talk about the flower behind Weiss and her Volume 4 hype image that you see on screen now. Now, the flower that I have kind of deducted this down to is the lily, and that's the only one I can see completely or even remotely looking as it does, as you see in the picture behind you. Is with the white coloring, even though white is the theme of Weiss, it's a tough kind of call to try and say it's anything else. But there are still a few notable things we can talk about if it is the lily, and those, the aspects of the lily, which are as thus: chastity and virtue, friendship and devotion, sympathy, wealth and prosperity, passion and drive, royalty and regal bearing, motherhood and fertility, purity and the beauty of youth, and renewal and rebirth. Now, as I said, this one's not too close to what it is possibly going. Like, it's hard to tell with Weiss because she's the most unsure. But if we were to take some of these aspects, and if we were to look at a few of these, I'm going to go tell you guys kind of what aspects I feel from least important to most important in this situation. I'm going to tell you guys what I feel, as I did previously, is going to be her path. The least important one that comes to mind is sympathy. That's reason being is that it's because she could show a lot more sympathy. She could become a lot more of a sympathetic character, but she's already had that evolution. And it's possible that the lily is here to represent both previous and ongoing and continuing characteristics of that character as Weiss develops. But sympathy is important, but on this list out of everything, other than wealth and prosperity, which is going to be next as I talk about, is the least important. Next, and above that is, as I said, wealth and prosperity, which is kind of ironic if you think about it, because wealth and prosperity, she's already wealthy with her father and her background as being the heiress to the Schnee Company dynasty. But as I said in a previous episode with Yang, wealth is also much more individualist. It's much more what someone perceives it as in their life. So wealth could be money, or it could be the wealth of friendship and good relations, and the prosperity of good relations as well. But it also could mean that she is moving on from her father, and she is going to acquire her own form of wealth and prosperity away from the dynasty that she is so tied to. Next is the idea of passion and drive, because it's so vague, but it could really dig deep into what I see her becoming. And as I said, I'll get to that towards the end after we go over the details of the lily. But passion and drive is just kind of something that's an overarching theme of all our characters. They're passionate and they're driven to become whatever and achieve whatever they look to achieve, and they are very goal-oriented and driven. It's kind of self-explanatory, but passion and drive is possibly one of the more important ones on this list. Friendship and devotion is the interesting one, because I feel going forward it is going to be, it's either between friendship and devotion or the renewal and rebirth that's really sticking out as one of the top ideas of what her destiny is to become. Because the renewal and rebirth, that screams more towards the wealth and prosperity aspect of the lily when it comes to Weiss, being that what is there to renew or be reborn in Weiss? Well, it's the freedom from her father that she's been so desperately looking towards, and to divide herself from the rest of her family to show that she is her own person and her own, really kind of to forge her own identity regardless of what her last name is. And so both are kind of interesting, but in the friendship and devotion, she's now away from the only people who's treated her normally, relatively, right? Blake's gotten into her face and tried to put her in her place. Yang doesn't care about her money. She just treats her as a person, regardless of her wealth. And RWBY just kind of treats her as trying to be fun, regardless of the sternness of Weiss's upbringing. Regardless of how stern Weiss's upbringing, RWBY wants to be that person that reminds her that they are young, or at least were, now that they are a little bit more wise for their age. So, with that being said, the aspects of friendship and devotion are just so important when you compare it to the renewal and rebirth, because not only is it something that she shares, but that the entire team RWBY as a whole shares. And as she goes forward, I see these two kind of intertwining, and her being a much more integral figure in the minds of it's time for her to pay back her debt. And this is where I will let you guys start hearing my thoughts on her volume 4, 5, and beyond character growth and character development. Weiss is most likely going to be freeing herself from her father's grasp. The lily is known to also be one of the first flowers to sprout or to bloom out of the winter season, going into the spring, if I'm not retarded and I know my seasons, yeah. So she's going to be she's going to bloom into her own person and realize the connections she had are more important than the connection she is being denied, or the basically abuse, or for lack of a better term, that's going to be going on with her father, and possibly even the fact that her father is going to completely prevent her from fighting, or force her to enroll in a different academy like Atlas, or not even just like Atlas. She is most likely, if she is going to continue her path, or her father will let her continue her path, will most likely be pushed down the road to going to Atlas instead of trying to, well, we can't return to Beacon, but she's going to be forced to stay under the thumb of her father. And I see that, especially in Volume 4, that she's going to renew herself and be reborn into her own person, possibly by fleeing her father, and possibly being reconnected with someone else from Beacon, or from Vacuo, or from any of the other schools that they might have known of, or been in, or any of their previous friends, really. But beside that, what I really consider her being is post this hiccup, because I feel like she's going to have one of the smaller character hiccups out of all of her characters, because she needs to get back on track to repay her debts that I mentioned earlier. And her debts to her team is that they taught her how to not necessarily live, but how to properly interact, and they showed her various things about the social side of life that she was not aware of, and they taught her how to be more personable, and they taught her what true friendship was not the forged friendships that are forced by money and politics, basically. So she's going to try and renew those, and I see her very much going into the route as the peacemaker. If she runs into any of the following, any of the former Team RWBY, whether it's Ruby Rose, whether it's Blake, or whether it's Yang, she is going to be the peacemaker. She's going to be the level-headed one out of them all, because I have a feeling that our three main girls are going to be blinded by one of three things. Ruby will be blinded by the idea of justice. Blake will be blinded by the idea of vengeance. And Yang will be blinded by the idea or feeling of jealousy or anger. But Weiss, even possibly through some very personal sacrifices, or even sacrificing her life, is going to show them that even though, yes, there is some sort of justice or vengeance, or there is a reason to be jealous and angry, that they can't let that blind them. And she's going to be that person who tries to really anchor our characters, and will possibly succeed, but we might have to see the end of Weiss. So with that being said, Weiss is going to be our even-headed, level-headed, wise woman. She's going to be the anchor. She's going to try and be the pillar of strength for her team and the people that she is going to interact with who were affected by the attack on Beacon. Which is kind of ironic because in volumes 1 and 2, she used her team as a pillar to grow, and now it's going to be the other way around with her being the pillar for her team to grow. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, Charming goes out. Peace.